Here we go, joined by Charles Davis at the Combine. It's just like yesterday. You were there at training camp with me. We were talking about these Detroit Lions and what they could be in the 2023 season. Made it to the NFC Championship game. Heartbreaking loss. But from day one of training camp, what did you see from this Lions team that you knew could carry them into a really successful season?
The things that started with Mrs. Hamp hiring Chris Spielman, I think that kind of went below the radar.
Yeah.
Ex-Lion coming back, be kind of special assist and all that. There's an influence that he has that I don't think it's appreciated by the national people. I think you and everyone else around the Lions understands that better. And Chris is not going to be a guy out in front. That's not what he wants to do. He wants to be back there. He just wants to do ball and the whole thing. But he had a heavy influence on Dan Campbell being the head coach, a heavy influence on Brad Holmes being the general manager. He's a go-to for both of them, a resource, all of that. He's fully involved with everything that goes on. And that culture started getting set right there. I'll never forget Chris telling me before Dan Campbell got hired. I knew it before other people. Yeah. Sorry, Chris. He's who we need, not necessarily people are going to understand. Boom, nailed it, understood what was needed in the culture, and now we see it. And that culture was being built even though they weren't winning games, and it paid off last year.
Yeah, and it's spiraled really into the mantra that is Brad Holmes now. Draft, develop, re-sign when it comes to the Combine.
Shop at home, right?
Yeah, exactly. Develop this talent and then hopefully re-sign them, get them paid.
Right.
How has he done such a great job of that so far, going into year 4 of a draft?
Everything you just said, which is his mantra. The evaluation process has been sensational for Detroit, which has led to their drafting being sensational. And then, as you said, now try and re-sign, like Jalen Reeves-Maben.
Yes.
Re-sign, homegrown, the whole deal. He was there before Brad Holmes, but he was a Lion.
Yes.
Right? Had to go away, come back, the whole deal. But when you look at what they've done draft-wise and having a conviction of what they're doing, not so much what we in the national media, Jahmyr Gibbs at 12, what are we thinking? We could get him at such and such. No, he's what we need right now. How'd that pay off? Pretty darn well, right?
Yep.
Didn't draft him, but Jared Goff was the quarterback. We're all screaming, what's Detroit going to do? Are they going to go get a quarterback? Can you draft one? Can you trade for one? But we kind of like the guy we have. We think he's pretty good. How'd that pay off? So I'm not saying every move is going to work because that's impossible in this world. But the vast majority of them, and you're seeing people drafted not just at the top end that pay off, but all the way through the draft.
The Brian Branches, the Sam Laportas, the Alvaro St. Browns.
How about Malcolm Rodrigez?
We love Rodrigo.
Okay. So all those things come into play. And I remember when he got drafted, I said, you drafted him to be a special teams player. Yeah. He ended up being a starting linebacker his rookie year.
He'll go and catch some balls at receiver, too.
Don't
doubt that,
he'll do all those things. And by the way, those wrestling moves, they pay off pretty well when you tackle people.
Right. Well, you go back to last draft. You have a running back and a linebacker in the first round. Everyone, it went insane. They did not like those picks from Brad Holmes. But what about the foundation that has been
How'd those
set?
picks turn out?
They turn out pretty well.
Okay, just checking.
What about the foundation allows Brad Holmes to go in there with the conviction you said and pick who he thinks is the best?
Yeah, and now that he's established that hey, by the way, I know what I'm doing because those guys have paid off so well, it allows you now, everyone to have that easy confidence about what you're doing, understanding, everybody gets out of the way, let the general manager do his job, and oh, by the way, he's pretty confident in what he does. He knows exactly what he's doing, but those players pay it off on the field. The culture has been set there with Dan Campbell and his staff, all the people who are working out there, and now they had that taste. I can't imagine they won't be back competing again. Now, we all know how difficult it is to win games, right? The Buffalo Bills have been awfully talented. Haven't gotten there yet. Doesn't mean they won't, but boy, that's frustrating for them. They even had it all set up this year. Oh, you got to come to us, Kansas City. Didn't get that one. Just tells you how difficult it is to get that last bit over the hump. You're right there. I think obviously the future is bright, but I think I always caution fans, don't expect the next step to be automatic.
No.
It's not automatic. But can they do it? Absolutely.
Yeah, Detroit did it with a top offense this past season. Defense is coming along. There's some new additions on the defensive staff. Terrell Williams there at D-line, who's been doing this for years.
That's a great addition. Deshae Townsend in the secondary. I love the additions that are there. These are true teachers, educators, and people that you want to play for. Danny, you played, I played. The people we responded to best, I'm willing to bet we knew they cared about us. If
you
they
can
did,
tell those guys too.
that's what you want,
Yes.
and that's what you're getting with these coaches, and that's what the players are going to get. Once we know you care, then you can coach us as hard as you want to.
Yeah.
I know you care about me, and you're going to take care of me when you absolutely have to, and that's when these guys find improvement.
Yeah, Detroit 27 in pass defense this past season. It's been the Achilles heel. As
Yeah.
a former DB, do they look to the draft to
Sure.
bump up that, or do they look to free agency?
I think you're going to look at a combination because what you want in free agency is that person can plug in right away.
Yes.
Best model I can give you last year, Jesse Bates going to Atlanta from Cincinnati. And all of a sudden they've got an all-pro center fielder who's a ball hawk, makes plays, helps your locker room, proven winner. Atlanta was on the precipice of going to the playoffs. They just didn't have a quarterback. If you're looking for a player like that, plus you go to the draft and you coach and develop, Kansas City would be a monster example of that. 2 years ago, their secondary, they didn't know what they were doing. They drafted all those guys. Remember, they drafted Joshua Williams in the second or third round. They drafted Trent McDuffie in the first round. They drafted Jalen Watson in the seventh round. They drafted Brian Cook in the third or fourth round. And all of them played as rookies, significant roles. They lived with bumps.
Yep.
Found a way to be good at the end of the year, win the Super Bowl. Come back a second year, win a second Super Bowl. Had an exceptional coach, too, and David Merritt, Deshae Townsend and crew. They get their opportunity to be those coaches.
So it can be done. All right, 29th overall for Detroit in this draft. Not number 2 overall, not number 8 overall, if they even
Actually,
stick there.
29th overall is a great place to be. That means you got a good football team. Terrible on the draft, but you don't want to be drafting first and second every year.
I know. So what do you think Detroit should do with 29th overall?
Listen, it's going to be best player available.
Okay.
That's the way I see it. I'm not going to sit here and tell you I know exactly what Brad's going to do, but I think that you're at a stage now that if you just draft, if you just say I'm going to draft for need, I think you're doing your team a disservice. I think you still want the best player out there. One of the things I learned young, and I absolutely believe in it, sometimes if you say, well, this player's a lot like this player, but I always ask, but if you think that player's better than that player, then you've done yourself a service because now you're just going to do something else with the other player, right? Go back to basketball. We're not going to draft Michael Jordan because we have Clyde Drexler. Now, Clyde Drexler was one of the top 50 players when they did the poll.
Yeah.
But he wasn't Michael Jordan.
Draft Michael Jordan.
Draft him. If he's there, you better go get him.